All right. We are back. This is the Hook'em Horns show. We are back for week 2 of the 2022 season. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the site editor over at hook'emheadlines.com. With me, we have Tarek LaCour and Shane Black, two contributors over at Hook'em Headlines. And this is, again, our second show of the 2022 season, previewing Alabama, giving some of our thoughts on last weekend, and how the rest of the season is looking moving forward. So opening thoughts, I'll toss that over to you, Tark.
Well, I was at the game. It was a pleasure to be there for the second year in a row, playing another Louisiana team. I'll bet not as good of a Louisiana team. And it was about what you would expect. I thought that Quinn Ewers looked good, not great. He settled in after that. Who would have thought your second pass as a college quarterback would be an interception? I was like, oh, that's got to hurt. But after that, settled in, looked great. Bijan Robinson, you know what he's capable of. Very impressed with the offensive line. I thought that Quinn actually early on didn't trust him enough because at the time he threw the interception as I was doing my rewatch, they were actually blocking fine. There was no reason for him to leave the pocket, and then he just went off. I was like, okay, freshman mistake. But but just the fact that they were standing everybody up, that was good. I thought the defense was sound. They looked like they were playing with effort, something you couldn't always say last season. We'll see if that holds up. On the defense, though, I was really impressed with Barron Sorrell. Thought he was excellent. Thought DeMarvion Overshown flying all around. Love what he's doing. And now we get to wait and see what Alabama brings. So there we are.
Shane?
Yeah, overall impressions for me, I thought we were able to do, or Texas was able to do what they were supposed to do, which is dominate UL Monroe with a pretty vanilla game script, and not really showing too much complicated schemes. I really liked a lot of the underclassmen stepped up. Tarek mentioned Barron Sorrell, but Jalen Gulliby had a great game in the secondary, and obviously JT Sanders, who graded out as the top tight end in the country, was awesome to see. I mean, we heard from Sark throughout camp how well Sanders was playing. He noted he had the best hands on the team, and you could see that in week 1. It seemed like him and Quinn had a great connection that I hope translates through the rest of the season. The one thing I will say about Quinn, this might just be me thinking really glass half full, but I thought it was kind of nice. It wasn't nice that he threw an interception on his second career pass in DKR. But what it did show is that he can bounce back from adversity because, that's obviously not the way you want to start your career as a Texas quarterback. But he came back and had a pretty solid rest of the game. And he's going to face a lot of adversity this season. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And with the way that he slings the ball, I think there's going to be a fair amount of turnovers. So him proving that he can kind of brush that off and come back out and still be an effective quarterback was, something that I took away as a positive from this one.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things y'all said, Shane. Yeah, I think a lot of people might not have really given proper credence to how valuable JT Sanders will be as a safety net for Ewers, having basically about as good of an outlet as you possibly can. They're out in the flats, sometimes just out in the middle, and someone that can block. Talked about it last week, his ability to really play multiple spots as a wide receiver, be a good flex tight end, also just be effective as an inline tight end as a blocker. But I mean, he'll be put to a whole different test this weekend against Alabama. So I mean, me personally, I think, obviously we're going to learn a lot about Quinn Ewers this weekend, and I think just how he can respond to adversity in some of these bigger games. I think that this weekend might be indicative of how he might handle a stage like OU, maybe a little bit of Oklahoma State or Baylor. Alabama's better than those, than Oklahoma State and Baylor, but I think OU's defense is gonna be pretty good this season. So, talking more specifically about the Alabama game this weekend, just from, kind of from y'all's perspective, and I'll give my take on this first. What do you think needs to happen, not necessarily for Texas to pull the upset? I mean, if you want to dig into that, you certainly can, but just for this to be considered a successful weekend for Texas, I will say from my perspective, obviously keeping it competitive, that's the easy answer here. But I'm more or less, I think, like, yes, for Quinn to have a big weekend, but I think for PK to continue to show that, like, he's got a good command of this defense, and that this defense will actually be, like, maybe one of the most improved in the Big 12 this season. I think if they can at least limit what Alabama can do in the passing game, I don't know how much you can really limit Bryce Young, but if they can get something done there, if they do a good job of preventing explosive plays in the running game. Jahmyr Gibbs is an insanely explosive running back. The guy's just going to pop off. I think I have a hard time seeing Jahmyr Gibbs not pop off maybe one or two for at least 30 or 40 yards this weekend, just because we're going to be focusing so much on Bryce Young. But I think that's going to be a big thing for me, is just seeing the defense continue to, kind of show flashes and show that they're a consistent unit this season. And then on offense, I'm not going to put too much stock into this game. Like, if the offensive line is a disaster, like if we come away with some injuries or something like that, obviously that would be pretty tragic and consequential moving forward for the rest of the season. But if Bijan can have a big game, if Xavier Worthy can manage to find some space when he's probably going to have double coverage on him for most of the game, I'd imagine that Alabama's going to have a safety shadowing him most of the game. I think that would be encouraging for his involvement moving forward. He had a pretty quiet week one. And then, if we can manage to get the ground game going, if we can set the tone versus Alabama in that sense, then that's a good sign moving forward that we should be able to set the tone against pretty much anyone. So those are the three things I'm looking at.
So I would say that I don't really like framing this game as Texas has nothing to lose. Of course, Sark has said it. The goal is a Big 12 title this season. I think we all know we're not going to be competing for a national championship. But I don't like framing it in the way that we have nothing to lose, because I certainly do think there is a lot to lose if Texas goes out there and looks like Oregon did against Georgia last week. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think I definitely don't think that's going to happen. But that is such a morale lower, for lack of a better term. You saw it last year when Sark kind of lost the locker room after a couple games that they let slip away, and then that spiraled into a 6-game losing streak. I personally just don't want to see these guys who seem to have a lot of buy-in this year just get really disgruntled if the game happens to go completely in Alabama's direction, which it certainly very well could. And I don't want, half the roster or more who had offers from Alabama to be like, okay, what am I doing here in Austin when these guys clearly have it going compared to what we're doing? So from that standpoint, I know there's no moral victories, but I think it'd go a long way to at least show that they can hang with the Bamas of the world, especially with that move to the SEC coming within the next few seasons.
Yeah, you don't want, Jalen Hale, kid that is trending a little bit more toward Alabama right now, and then Malik Muhammad I believe he's taking an official visit, or at least planning on it, to Alabama now.
October 8th, I think that's so he'll be going OU week.
Muhammad?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which because it'd be nice for him to just stay home in Dallas and help recruit for us, but that's okay. Well, we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, it makes me uneasy when Alabama's choosing this time to go after a guy. Jamarian Miller last year was a good example of what can happen there. But anyway, Tarek, what are your thoughts on the weekend?
I guess I'm in the middle between both of you. I don't think this game. It's been talked about the national level, the College Game Day, and Big Noon Kickoff. I think it's being blown up way, way bigger than it is, because I think there's just a section of the Texas fan base, I mean, I can feel the tug at times, that really, really has not gone over that 2009 national championship game where you see the Texas decline and the Alabama rise, and thinking we can finally get revenge. Well, no, you can't. The only way to get revenge for that game is to play in a national championship again against Alabama and win, which isn't this game. This is an exhibition game, ultimately. Having said that, that doesn't mean, and I've said on Twitter a few times, this game doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because as Sark said, and I really like what he said at his press conference, my goal is to be in Dallas in December. So he's got his head on right. It would be, I think I would feel a lot differently about this game if it was week 6 or week 7, once, Quinn got his feet wet, people are feeling things out. It's like, okay, went from probably the worst team that you could possibly play last week in ULM to the best team you could possibly play in Alabama. And it's a polarizing situation. But I think to be successful, Texas needs to just look calm. They need to do what they do. And they need to just not overreact to whatever happens. So keep your head up, keep fighting to the end, that type of thing. At Arkansas, they just look scared. I don't want to see that. One thing, and I was doing my rewatch, and I really liked this. So Quinn threw the pick, and then he went right over to Sark, and Sark started coaching him up. I remember last year when things would happen with Card or Casey Thompson, they'd kind of go to themselves. But Sark is being a bit more assertive this season, saying, no, I'm the quarterback coach. Come talk to me. What happened? Let's get this straightened out. And Quinn kept his head up. He was talking to people, laughing. That's what you need to see during Alabama. Same thing.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I feel like that there's been a whole lot of Casey Thompson talk this season, and I think there will continue to be to some degree. But I want to say after the first 35 minutes of that North Dakota game that he had, he completed 55% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. So yeah, I think moving forward we'll be fine. I like the way that Quinn Ewers responded for sure. I think a lot of people have talked about this week, and rightly so. Someone that's 18 years old starting his first game to show that type of maturity is big. He's going to need that moving forward. I guess I didn't mean to give off such the vibe that I think that this, that Texas has nothing to lose this game. Shane, we do want. I want Quinn Ewers looking better than Bo Nix. That's a rock bottom part.
Alabama.
When
Sark was there.
Yeah. So, Tariq, you did bring up an interesting point, though, where it's the way that Texas went into the Arkansas game last season. I think that Sark, he was very honest about Texas just not being prepared for that, and that, he took some of the blame for that, and I like that. I look back at a few years ago, Notre Dame, when they had that really bad season. I think that was 2016. Brian Kelly came back before the 2017 season, was I honestly just don't think I coached my best season. I know Brian Kelly doesn't look good right now. Push that LSU game aside over the weekend, but
that was so crazy.
I think that there's some similarities in the sense that that sense of ownership, and then it just things kind of feeling different the following season, where Texas does feel like they have more confidence, especially certain skill positions. Tight end is clearly better. The defense seems more confident, and it just seems like they're more of a cohesive unit now. I do think that Texas is going to come out with a lot of fight this weekend, and that's where I think hey, maybe you lose by 2 touchdowns, but if you get some of these young guys a lot of confidence heading into UTSA, and UTSA, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is a team that Texas can do some damage against. You start really getting this snowball of momentum going if, you start out this weekend good, play well against UTSA, head into Texas Tech with plenty of confidence. I think that's what you want from this weekend is, you know, yeah, we looked good. We've made strides. People are buying in. We're headed in the right direction. Two of the crazier things that I saw, I'm sure that this is a commonly known thing, but I saw today that I think the last time that Texas even played an AP top 2 ranked team was Alabama in the BCS title game. But yeah, so that was interesting. I guess that's more of a reflection on the Big 12 than that is anything else. Like, I mean, obviously you played LSU in 2019, one of the best teams in my lifetime, without a doubt.
I think they were like number 8 when we played them.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that game was 3 years ago today, so 3rd and 17. Legend is.
Well,
I heard Greg McElroy talking about that game, and he said like that, it was close, and like everyone always says it was close until Joe Burrow had that wild touchdown pass. Was that Justin or Jamar? That was Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah, it was Jefferson.
Yeah. And then Greg McElroy was like, yeah, it was over after that. And I think people forget that, again, Colin Johnson was so close to recovering that onside kick.
I had almost forgotten about that, so I did a rewatch over the summer. I was like, oh wow, we actually we were still in the game.
Yeah. And I mean, that was, yeah. But I do think that
what happens against Alabama, I think people will take it a little better than they did against LSU.
I don't.
If it's 3rd and
This
7.
LSU team might be better than this Alabama team.
oh
I
yeah,
mean,
100%. I think
Right.
so. I think
too early to say.
a lot of people have been saying that this is one of Saban's best Alabama teams. I don't totally buy that at all. Obviously, this team is insanely talented, but I think they're less proven than what Alabama's trotted out in the past. The difference is that they arguably have the best offensive player that Saban has ever had in Bryce Young, and the best defensive player Saban has ever had in Will Anderson. You can obviously argue that either way. There are a lot of great players to come through, but I think, I mean, the offensive and defensive sides of the ball for the Tide are obviously led by these like 2 superstars who are likely to be top 5 draft picks in the 2023 NFL draft. But if you look at their wide receiver room, Jermaine Burton, who transferred from Georgia, obviously has a ton of talent, and with a bigger target share, he's going to be really good this year. I think we can all agree on that. But behind him, it's just a lot of unproven guys who, granted, were high 4-star or 5-star recruits. Who, Andrew, I'm sure you can speak more to about having followed the recruiting trail more closely. But it's not like one of these stables of wideouts that when we saw they had Judy, Devontae, Jalen Waddle, and Henry Ruggs. It doesn't feel that same way to me.
Always a dagger for me, man.
Also,
Yeah.
Shane, I don't want you saying that. And then I really like Kobe Prentice. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
I think I liked Tyler Harrell, I think, a little bit more when that first happened than I do now.
Guy's got stone.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think that I think you make a good point that this team, when push comes to shove in the SEC, like they're not as good in the trenches as some of the better teams that Saban's had. It's not one of the best defensive lines. It's not one of the best offensive lines by any stretch of the mind. I just don't think that Texas, especially, I mean, yeah, obviously you'd really like to have a good edge rusher here to take advantage of some of the question marks for Alabama at offensive tackle. But that's just not. I mean, maybe Sorrell and Overshone come up huge this game.
Don't forget Justice Finkley. I was impressed with him too. The guy sets the edge really well. He knows how to keep. Something I was noticing against him and Agofu tries to always swim around, where Finkley just held the point of attack and then he made the tackle. And I kept thinking, so a true freshman's getting this, and Ovi Agofu's still not getting that. And I was like, ugh.
I think. Or go ahead, Andrew.
Man, Ovi Agofu is going to be an X factor this weekend.
Yeah.
He needs to be really good. I know he's played Alabama before. When he was with Notre Dame, different defense, though, different role. Like, he's going to have to diagnose plays so fast. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this Alabama team is better than the one that they had in 2020.
It's not.
But, yeah, I think it's going to be tough I think it's going to be really, really tough for this defensive front.
Yeah.
That 2020 Alabama team, I think, is better than this one.
I would agree.
Yeah.
That was a really, really good team. I mean, I think we shortchanged them because of the COVID season and things like that. But that Alabama team ran over Georgia, ran over Notre Dame. Looked like they were just playing against a JV team against Ohio State, which Ohio State was full of talent. That was a great, great team.
Yeah.
It,
yeah. Man, yeah, that team.
Going back on the Ovi Agofu point, I assume y'all noticed this, but on that great play from Overshone on the 3rd and goal when the ULM quarterback was he was going to have a walk-in touchdown because Agofu bit the play fake and he dove in. Luckily, Overshone came around from the backside and made the play, but everyone seemed to be talking about how good of a play that was from Overshone, which it definitely was, but I was more focused on, that's going to happen again this season. That's going to be a walk-in touchdown because Agofu, dove down at the running back when he was supposed to hold contain.
Yeah, I mean they're trying out some freshmen in place of him that I think can contribute this season if Ovi is going to have some of the same struggles he did last season in terms of just like his like lack of stability setting the edge, and just his kind of inconsistent angles that he takes for approaching tackles, overrunning in pursuit a lot. And I don't know. It's gonna be tough.
Ovi is really athletic, which is something that Kwiatkowski likes in his edge linebackers. But he's not he doesn't make the best decisions and isn't the best reader of things. And he sometimes there are some players, and I can understand in an era of Will Anderson and Dallas Turner where you want to make the big play all the time. Ovi is always trying to make the big play rather than just making the smart play.
Yeah.
That's something that NFL scouts are going to hold against him because they're going to want you to make the smart play because you can't just out athletic people in the league most of the time.
Yeah. So there's a million different ways that I think you could slice up this game, of what it could mean to each team. There was one more thing I actually wanted to say just in regards to numbers. I don't know if anyone's kind of thought about it this way, but if in I would say the 2% chance that Texas, in my mind, it's like somewhere between 2 and 8 or 10 or something like that percent chance that Texas could win.
I'm a little higher. Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah. If Texas did win, though, Steve Sarkisian's record at Texas would now be 500.
Yeah, that would be so funny.
Yeah, that one was crazy for me. But I did want to talk about for this game, because I think that this is gonna be a difficult spot for some freshmen, but obviously a chance for really everyone to step up. I mean, Texas is gonna need everything they can get from everyone in this game. One or two guys that you think are in a spot to just impress some people or step up. It could be big names, small names.
I'm going to say Jalen Gilbo is going to be very important because while Bryce Young is the second best quarterback in college football, I think C.J. Stroud's the best. I know I might be in the minority, but I do think that. He's better. He's better between in the mid-range game. That's where he really kills you. His deep ball isn't quite as good as I think C.J. Stroud's, and that's not where the offense lies anyway, especially with the way O'Brien calls it. So the star position is going to be very, very critical, especially with Cameron Latu coming back, who's a favorite of Bryce Young, and is a safety valve for him. So I think the Gilbo is going to be very important. And then, of course, the obvious person is going to be Kelvin Banks. I think Kelvin Banks had a fantastic opening game. But now you have to go against Dallas Turner, against Will Anderson, and others. So if he can just give Quinn Ewers a little bit of time, they'll have a chance to be decent. My biggest hope for this game is I just don't want to be embarrassed. I can live with a loss, but getting embarrassed again, we're not going to hear this until the OU game.
I would say this is an odd answer, but I would say that I think win or loss. I think Bijan Robinson, to Texas fans, to most even casual college football fans, very well known name. But to those people who are just watching like the big game of the weekend, more NFL type fans, they might not know who Bijan Robinson is. I think if he can come out and we're going to force feed him the ball. If he can kind of dominate the way he has dominated in his 2+ years in Austin, I think he could become one of those household college football names. Like right now it is kind of Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I think Bijan could put himself in that category where, you ask for me, I always do my gauge of, my dad doesn't watch a ton of college football, but if my dad knows who the player is in college, then he is a darn good player. And I think if Bijan can have a good enough game to where he breaks through that mold, I think that would be cool to see. I mean, just some of the jump cuts he made last week, it'll be interesting to see how those translate to a defense like Bama. And for people who follow Texas like we do and our listeners and viewers, that might be like an odd answer. But I think this could kind of bump Bijan up into one of the most recognizable faces in the sport this season if he has a breakout game. And also, it's going to dictate whether or not we have any chance at all. If they stymie the run game, I don't see Texas with any chance to win. I have one of my keys to the game, controlling possession and force-feeding Bijan, which can set up play-action pass, deep shots. So I think like most games for Texas this season, it's going to start with Bijan. And with a ton of eyeballs on him, I think he has a great chance to make himself known, like not just to college football fans, but to like your grandma as well, who might be tuning into the game.
Yeah, it's weird to think that Bijan Robinson isn't like a given, like that it could end up like the Arkansas game last season, where like he was still he actually came out of that game still with like decent numbers, which is pretty impressive. But I think that, and this is where I'll kind of get into my first key player here, is I keep saying Bijan's got to be able to set the tone. For one, Alabama, God knows they were good against the run last season. Just basic team counting stats, I didn't really just get how big of a difference there was between their defensive production, defending the pass and then defending the run. They averaged something like 87 yards per game allowed rushing yards per game last season, about 2.5 per carry.
Wow.
And yeah, they played some good running teams.
I did not realize 87 kind of makes sense. They're leading in a lot of games, but 2.5 a carry that's ridiculously low.
It is, and this is where I think that for one, Texas has an opportunity here. There was 2 or 3 teams last season that were able to run the ball on Alabama. And anytime I get into these type of conversations where it's kind of exhausted me this week, between kind of doing, I outlined reasons why Texas could shock Bama, but it's really just, it's 4 of the 10 reasons. I've said this a few times just talking to friends this week. It's with the 11th reason being just a miracle, like 4 of the 10 reasons that I think just exist of like how Texas could physically beat Alabama. And it's just every time it feels like you found like a weakness in Alabama, they're just so good at masking it, whether you're just like the eye test or diving right into the numbers. So anyway, with Bijan, you gotta get him going, because if you can't get Bijan going, you're gonna have a harder time getting Quinn Ewers comfortable. Layering concepts there, it's not gonna be smooth. Quinn is gonna have pressure in his face. I don't know. If you're not able to set the tone, if you're not able to get your guys out in space early on, also, then the rest of the game is going to be extraordinarily difficult. I think like I have an interesting one who, like, I really think that Christian Jones will be an important player here. You mentioned it is kind of ironic. You said he was like, was he the only?
Like, he was one of 2 Texas offensive starters from last week that wasn't offered by Alabama.
Okay. Was
I think it was Major. It was Majors is the other one.
Majors, that's right. So Christian Jones, like, I don't know if that's like the sort of thing that would keep, allow him to have a chip on his shoulder, but Christian Jones, I think people have kind of just because his struggles in pass pro, I think people have kind of undervalued his run blocking ability. I know that still gets recognized. He was good blocking for the run last weekend. And to say that he will be like really, really important for Texas to be able to get the outside zone game going is a massive understatement. Like, Christian Jones, he's got the size, he's got the experience. I mean, to say that like he's going to be able to consistently, without help, block like a Will Anderson or Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, someone like that, I mean, that'd just be a straight up lie. But like, I do think Christian Jones could be an undervalued part to this game if he has one of his better games in run blocking. He was solid last weekend, and I think that's where Texas is going to really need his value. He's going to have a tough time. Like, you're going to have to give him help in pass pro, but I think where he could really contribute value and kind of be a guy that steps up and provides that extra punch. Yeah, so he'd be one of them. I would say the other really big one for me is probably, I want to include both of them, but like, I think that Texas could actually have like a comparable match, like a competitive matchup, I guess is the right word I'm looking for here, between our corners and Alabama's wide receivers. Like, if our safety help is good over the top and we're able to generate any sort of pass rush, Alabama gave up somewhere in the ballpark of 2.5 sacks, or no, Bryce Young has taken roughly 2.5 sacks per game since the start of last season. I think for a guy that's as escapable as he is, as quick, and just the fact that it's Alabama, like, Texas is gonna have the opportunity to get home here, and that should make life easier on the corners. I mean, Ryan Watts, I think, looked pretty good last weekend. That's not gonna be, I don't think that's gonna be that valid for this coming weekend, but I like the corner matchup.
His size and strength, he can bully guys at the line of scrimmage, and he likes to do that, so that's good.
It is, yeah. He'll probably get Jermaine Burton for a lot of this game, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to see Deshaun Moore on someone like a Kobe Prentice or a Tyler Harrell.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point, though. I had that in my notes, that one of Texas' path to victory is to have PK, trust the guys on the outside to match up man to man. And I wrote, I think we can. Obviously, you said ULM is certainly not a measuring stick, but Ryan Watts looked solid. Jalen Gulliby looked good as well. Deshaun Jameson, if he can't match up after 4 seasons, then he shouldn't really be on the field anymore. But I think we can match up with these wide receivers. Like I mentioned before, they have a ton of talent, but they don't have those in-game reps, and a lot of them don't have that experience. So I think if we're able to match up on the outside, and especially in the first quarter, if the guys on the outside realize, like, hey, we're doing this, we're sticking with these guys, and we're getting home up front, I think that's just going to build confidence, because half the battle of playing defensive back is being confident. And if they can build confidence, not get beat over the top in the first quarter, quarter and a half, I think that bodes well for us going forward throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, like, I really think that Dijon Jamison, like, got that crazy punt block last weekend, got the pick six. Like, Texas is going to need that sort of, like, those sort of scoring plays to keep it competitive. Like, I don't think you're going to methodically beat, like, with Quinn Ewers at QB right now, I don't think you're going to methodically drive down the field, like, putting up multiple touchdowns, multiple scoring drives like that. You're going to need, maybe Bijan to break one, manage to somehow get Worthy over, or someone over the top. Hell, get Milton out there. I don't know. Get one of these guys out in space. Or,
Don't forget Jay Hall.
That would be a crazy storyline if he came out and, like, had 5 catches for 100 yards.
He's back in practice this week. He didn't practice last week, I don't think.
He's the guy that I think he's the kind of guy that's closest to what Isaiah Mayor brought you. He's the kind of guy Quinn Ewers likes, like, who can high point the ball, who can get downfield, who's a bigger guy. No one else really gives you that, aside from Jatavian Sanders, obviously, who's not a wide receiver.
And I think, like, I don't know, man. Whittington's a physical, experienced wide receiver that does a lot of these little things well. Like, he's facing some, like, Eli Ricks isn't, like, he's had starts under his belt at LSU, but, like, if you're looking at, like, Terry and Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry, like, Jordan Whittington's going to have a chance to get some separation against those guys, I think, especially if he can get pretty physical around the line of scrimmage. I don't think they're really going to have those guys pressing all that much. But, yeah, I think there will be opportunities. But, yeah.
I think the first quarter is going to go a long way into how we're going to see the final 3 quarters play out, because if we're pressing too hard in the first quarter and Ewers is forcing balls deep, and like, we're not getting the run game established, and on the defensive side of the ball, people are playing scared. Like one of y'all mentioned, we looked at Arkansas last year. That will be a problem. But if we can come out with confidence and establish any sort of running game with Bijan, which can set up the play action pass while also not allowing Will Anderson and Dallas Turner to pin their ears back and just come after Quinn, I think that'll be massive. Just to show that we can hang with Bama in the trenches would be massive in the first 15 minutes of this game.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Before we get to some parting shots here, so we did our roundtable, like staff predictions, not really roundtable. We did our staff predictions last week. So I want to keep this going moving forward. This is just the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at margin of victory compared to, like, from the guesses compared to what actually happened. I predicted 51-21, so I had a difference of 30. That was not too close. Margin of victory of 42. Tarek, you actually came the closest. You said 49-10, so you're pretty spot on.
I knew we were just. I knew we were going to give up a touchdown late. That was.
Yep.
You put like more faith in our defense.
Basically, it could have been. It probably would have been if Quinn doesn't throw that pick, that might be a shutout. But
yeah, yeah, that's true. And then Shane, you were close. You had 55-17, so you had 38. So just in terms of margin of victory, you were 1 point off. All right, so Tarek, you got the leaderboard so far. And then Carson, another person on staff. He said 41-13, so came in last place. All right, so the worst part of the show, score predictions.
Are we going hard or head here? Hard or head?
I always go with my head, man.
Okay, I'm with you.
Jane, go for it.
So I'll let Tarek lead it off. You know, he earned the right.
Okay. But quick anecdote here. So I always go with my heart because I remember my head, because I went with I remember Brady versus Mahomes, and I said I just can't bet against Brady. It's like, even though it makes so much sense for the Chiefs, so I was like, I can't bet against Brady, of course. Well, we know how that worked out. So for this game, I'm going to say Alabama will win, shocker, and the score will be 38-28. So they'll win by 10.
Okay.
My score is fairly similar. I think Alabama is going to win.
It's by 20. I don't see that.
I think we stay inside the number, but I'm going to go 41-24 Bama.
Okay. I'll be honest, I still don't really know. Like, I don't. ULM, I had that score in my head for like 3 weeks, I think. Even before the injuries that happened during camp. It just felt like it was more set. There's something that's telling me 45-24. I think that was Sark when he was the head coach still at Washington, had like a loss to like one of the higher ranked teams he ever played. That was Oregon. I think that was the same score. That might be why that's sticking to me.
That was his last season at Washington.
Wait, Washington, Oregon was 45-24 that last season.
Yeah,
6 or something like that. Yeah, 45-24. I'll go with that because I look at it this way. Like, I think that this game could play out in a similar, not the same, they're different teams, but I think this game could play out in a similar fashion to the way that the Alabama-Tennessee game did last year. Where I think that talent-wise, and I think Sark's been game planning this for a while, and I think he's going to have some stuff up his sleeve this weekend. I don't know how well that's going to work, but I think that there's going to be some mistakes that we make that maybe Quinn makes that's going to separate this game, that's going to make it look worse than it would be if he was just a little bit more short up. I think it could look like maybe more of like a 35-24 game, or even more of like a 45-31 game. But I think there's gonna be something that pushes it to a 3-score game.
Yeah. So you're the only one picking Alabama to cover.
We'll see for how long. That line keeps moving in Alabama's favor every single day.
Yep.
It was 14.5, I think it was at the outset of fall camp. And I think today it's at 20.5. So it keeps sliding. I also have never really seen the FPI move without like any injuries or anything, and both teams staying stationary, or at least the matchup predictor. Alabama had like a 77% chance to win last week. It's now, I think it's a little north of 82% right now.
Well, Texas Tech had like a 97% chance of winning that game. So,
Alan Bowman.
Well, back in 2020?
Yeah.
No, it was at one point it was like 99.8.
Okay.
You never say never.
Close it down. 15.
Do not put your horns down.
Yeah.
Especially not when Tom Herman is head coach. Man, I don't know if y'all listened to the Tom Herman broadcast at all, but I don't know if it was jitters or what. I saw it for like 10 minutes. I had a few TVs going, and I just wanted to see what it would be like. And
what game was he on?
He was on SMU North Texas.
No, I didn't get eyes on that.
How did he look?
How did what?
How did he look?
I don't think I actually got a shot of him. But it felt awkward.
Was he a color commentator now?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
like their analyst. It's
he doesn't have like the voice inflection or personality for that, but that's fine. He'll be in Nebraska in a few months anyways, and he has the perfect personality for that.
yeah. There's so many programs that I think I don't know. I'm not a Nebraska fan. I don't really know that many Nebraska fans either. But I bet that there's a lot of Nebraska fans out there that yearn to have the Bo Pelini era back.
Oh yeah, that one stat that was going around that even if Scott Frost wins like 30 games in a row, he'll still have a worse record than Bo Pelini. That's crazy
Well,
to think about.
he's even making Riley look like a superstar. I don't. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just yeah.
yeah.
It's just
One final note about this game. Um, I really hope Isaac Pearson is, on the jug machine or something because he cannot. That would be a backbreaker if any of those drop snaps, whether it's when he's punting or we're attempting a field goal, happen. Texas needs everything on special teams to go perfect to want any chance to win this game. So Isaac Pearson, please, I hope you have a strong week when it comes to catching the football.
he would worry me as a holder, but I think just in terms of his punting, it was his first game. To me, the fact that he was still able to get it off
Yeah.
was important. But I mean, obviously, yeah, that was a bad drop. It wasn't
So
like it was going
Who's
10
never seen a guy lose two jobs in one game? You have now.
why wouldn't is it just kind of you don't want to rub salt in the wound, or I don't get why Hudson Card wouldn't be the holder. I mean,
I
he,
think that's because Bert Auburn likes working with Pearson. They pick their holder,
oh,
so
okay.
they work with him
Okay.
the most. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I,
It's just
I
tough
thought
on the
Pearson was still
second.
holding for Will Stone. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they both prefer that, or maybe they just try to get one guy reps too. But all right. So parting shots, whatever y'all have on your mind.
I would just say I think the most important person associated with this game that Texas is to pull an upset is Sark. And obviously, Andrew, you mentioned it. He's been scripting plays for this game for months at this point. But he seems confident in his press conference that if they run what he has scripted if they run it well, then they should be able to hang with Bama. But he needs to be able to react on his feet and put his guys in good spots. Get the ball in space to Xavier Worthy, to Kelvin Robinson, to Bijan Robinson, to JT Sanders. Let his guys go and make plays because what I don't want to see is Quinn just forcing the ball down the field and walking away from this game, completing 50% of his passes with 3 interceptions. There's no need for that. He did a good job of getting the ball to guys in space behind the line of scrimmage last week. We should continue to do that until, unless Alabama shows that they're going to make every single tackle, which they might. But you never know what can happen when you get your talented skill players with the ball in space.
My parting shot is make sure to use Bijan Robinson in a Najee Harris way. That means split him out, throw him the ball, get him the ball however you can, and he will make things happen. I hope to see some tempo as well and taking a lot of deep shots to challenge the defensive backs. I think you need to loosen them up so you can run the ball. You might need to throw to run in this game. I think they're going to come out trying to stop the run, so you might need to pass first to set that up.
Yeah, man. Here's my parting shot, just more to the running backs. It's funny you mentioned Dijon Robinson. That was going to be part of mine. Yeah, Bijan Robinson, so I don't remember where I heard this, but you can see it a little bit in dissecting the numbers for Alabama from last season and just some of the guys they returned this season. But JT Sanders is going to be a huge part of just the entire season, but definitely this game. He's going to be a problem. Alabama, even if they have to devote an extra resource, that takes a valuable safety away from like covering like Jordan Whittington or Xavier Worthy. Bijan Robinson is electric when he gets the ball in his hands in space. Bijan Robinson, I mentioned this last week, and I don't mean to be nitpicky about him because he is very good. But I think he could be even better if he doesn't have some of these drops. He had 4 or 5 drops last season. He had the worst drop grade of, I believe, any skill position player we had last season that had at least 20 targets. So,
I thought that was Josh Moore.
Josh Moore was pretty bad too. But I might be wrong on that. If it wasn't the worst, it was the second worst. So the point there is like, if Bijan Robinson has like a perfect game, I mean, it feels like we've watched a lot of like pretty much perfect games or near perfect games from Bijan. But like if he has a perfect game this weekend, I really don't know how much Alabama really has the answer for that, because then again, turning resources away, Texas still has guys that could play for Bama, that could start for Bama. There's not a ton of them, but I mean, Xavier Worthy is probably starting for Bama. Bijan Robinson is probably starting for Bama. JT Sanders might be starting for Bama, at least getting reps with Latu. If Bijan Robinson has a very good game this weekend, if he, especially in the receiving game, gets the ball in his hands and is able to just, take off in space, that's going to be huge. My kind of build off of that is that I really liked the wide receiver blocking last week, and that if Whittington is fighting at the line of scrimmage the way he was, he had some nice blocks. Casey Kane had a couple of nice blocks too. Milton is a decent open field blocking receiver. He's going to put in the effort, but obviously just a little undersized. I mean, if wide receiver blocking is that good again, then or at least that they're putting in the effort.
Yeah.
Then that'll be huge. We only really had Marcus Washington last year that was a consistent blocking wide receiver.
Yeah, it looks like they enjoy it, and it was good to see JT Sanders hold his own, because it seems like he enjoys blocking as well, which was definitely a question mark when he came to Austin. But game one, and just off of that, I have it pulled up right here. Granted, it was only 6 runs, but Savion Red graded as the highest Texas run blocker last week.
Savion Red had some nice blocks. Yeah, he was solid. That's interesting. Okay.
Some Debo Samuel in that boy.
The gem find of the 2020 or 2022 class, at least so far. But yeah, I would like to see, man, that'd be so cool if we could get Keelan Robinson in space and he could.
Yeah.
Him and Hall, I'm telling you, this is the game to do it.
Keelan, I think you can tell that like Keelan likes to joke around a lot when he's like talking to the media. He gets like a lot more serious when it, not a lot more, but he gets a little bit more serious when it talks about Bama. And he's, I mean, obviously Bama transfer, but like, I think if there's any game that he's ready to just go off and like, I don't know, maybe we see some 22 personnel stuff.
I think we will.
I think we should at least.
Saban said, I think it was last week, that Keelan would be starting if he was still in Alabama. So that's saying a lot.
I think he's kind of saying that to. He could be. The cynic in me thinks he's saying that just to, rile some feathers, ruffle some feathers. But
everyone was so respectful.
If you think the quarterback battle this year was between Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers was crazy, wait until next season when it's Cedric Baxter, Keelan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue all fighting, trying to be the starting running back. That's going to be a great competition.
That's good for the team, though.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. I made the prediction last week that Jonathan Brooks was going to match his total production of last season in the month of September, and I don't know. He got a touchdown, so maybe he'll get another one against UTSA or Tech. Anyway.
Hope
All
so.
right. Sorry?
I said hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. That is it for the week 2 show here for the Hook'em Horns show. Hoping to get something up a little bit earlier next week. Hey, maybe we'll have something optimistic, hopefully, coming out of the weekend. But for all of us here, again, we are all with hook'emheadlines.com. Last week linked up all of our stuff down in the description below, and we'll do the same this week. We will have plenty of Alabama content coming up.
Yep.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Thank you.